The silence was the worst part. Not the quiet of a peaceful night, but the deafening, mocking silence of a machine that had just died. 2 days ago, a rogue squall had come out of nowhere, hitting Elias Vance's 40-foot sloop the Wanderer like a vengeful god. The mast snapped at the deck, sending a thunderous splintering sound across the equatorial Pacific. It took everything Elias had just to survive the 30 minutes of chaos. Now all that remained was a broken hull, a makeshift rudder, and the horizon. A perfect, endless blue circle with him at its terrifying center. Elias was a sailor, a veteran of 7 solo crossings, a man who believed in preparation over luck. But no amount of preparation can save you when fate decides it's your time. He sat in the cramped cabin, the air thick with the smell of diesel and salt, staring at the last remaining canister of fresh water. It was a standard 2-gallon jerrycan. Half full. 1 gallon. He did the math for the 100th time. The survival manual, memorized years ago, echoed in his mind. 3 days without water is the limit. Restricting water intake can stretch survival to 7 to 10 days, but at a severe cost. He was 4 days into the disaster. His skin already felt tight, his lips cracked and stinging. He was on a meager 8 ounces a day. At that rate, he had perhaps 2 days left of true hydration, followed by 2 days of slow, certain decline. After that, the terrifying unknown. His eyes drifted to the window, to the vast, shimmering expanse of the ocean. It was a beautiful death trap, 1 billion gallons of water he couldn't drink. He closed his eyes and tried to conjure the image of a tall, cold glass of tap water, just to feel the psychological relief, but the image felt distant and mocking. Water, water, everywhere, nor any drop to drink. The line from the ancient mariner wasn't a poem, it was a biological verdict. He spent the 5th day arguing with his own mind. The internal debate was a relentless psychological torture. His instinct, drink. You are surrounded by life. The world is water. You just need a little. Just enough to stop this constant tearing thirst. His training? No. You know the rule. The single most sacred rule of ocean survival. Never drink the sea. He knew the reason. He could quote the science to himself, even through the haze of dehydration. The human body is mostly water, but its fluid balance is precise. Seawater contains an average of 3.5% salt, or 35 grams of sodium chloride per liter. That level of salinity is lethal. When you drink it, the salt is absorbed into your bloodstream. Your body immediately tries to correct this dangerous imbalance. The kidneys kick in, desperately trying to flush out the excess sodium. But to do that, they need water. And where do they get the water from? From your cells. The fluid is literally sucked out of your tissues, your muscles, and most critically, your brain to create enough urine to dilute and expel the salt you just drank. It is the ultimate paradox. Drinking seawater makes you more dehydrated than you were before. It doesn't quench your thirst, it accelerates your death. But the logical argument was losing ground to the raw, animal desperation burning in his throat. He lifted the empty measuring cup. His saliva felt like sand. His tongue was thick. He hadn't urinated in over 18 hours. His body was already cannibalizing itself for moisture. Just a little bit, he whispered, his voice a dry, rasping croak. A single cup. Can't hurt that much. It'll just delay the thirst, give me an hour, 2 hours of relief. He crawled out onto the deck. The sun was an enemy, beating down with a suffocating intensity. He noticed his hands were shaking violently as he dipped the plastic cup into the crystalline blue water beside the hull. The water was beautiful. Clear. Cold. He brought it up to the light. It looked exactly the same as water from a tap. He could smell the ocean, clean, deep, and potent. The logical part of his brain screamed poison. But the rest of his mind was a single, howling demand. Survive. With a sudden, final surrender, he brought the cup to his lips. The taste was overpowering. Not just salty, but bitter, metallic, and sickeningly thick. He'd expected the salt, but the sheer chemical aggressiveness of it hit him like a physical blow. He only managed 3 large gulps before his stomach rebelled, contracting violently. He gagged, coughing up a mixture of bile and seawater. But in those first few seconds, there was a fleeting, magnificent sense of relief. His throat was coated. The burning thirst was momentarily smothered. He felt a rush of energy, a quick, false victory. I beat it, he mumbled, wiping the salty residue from his chin. Just a small dose. I managed it. He crawled back inside, wrapping himself in a shredded emergency blanket to conserve what little fluid he had left. He thought he could sleep now. He had won the battle. But the war was just beginning, and the new enemy was now inside him. The change began quickly. Within an hour, the deceptive relief vanished, replaced by an even fiercer, more demanding thirst. It wasn't the slow, gnawing hunger for water he knew before. This was a searing, biological panic. The salt he'd consumed had done its work. Inside his veins, the concentrated sodium acted like a sponge, pulling water from every cell in his body. His body was now an emergency room, the cells sending distress signals at a catastrophic rate. Elias tried to sit up, but his muscles locked, spasming uncontrollably. A fiery, burning sensation raced up his arms and legs. He thought it was cramp, but it was worse. His entire nervous system was starting to short-circuit. This was hypernatremia, salt poisoning, taking hold. He looked at his hands. They seemed too big, the veins distended. The salt, unable to be processed, had also begun to elevate his blood pressure, sending a terrible, pounding ache behind his eyes. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to concentrate, trying to remember his name. Elias Vance. He tried to count the remaining sips of fresh water, just to ground himself in reality, but the numbers were blurry. The thought of drinking his last fresh water to counter the lethal seawater was a horrifying, impossible choice. He was now in a feedback loop of self-destruction. The next few hours were a descent into madness. The most crucial organ to dehydrate in the body is the brain, which is protected by the blood-brain barrier. But excessive salt forces water out of the brain cells, causing them to shrink. This shrinkage, this cellular self-cannibalism, leads to the classic symptoms of severe hypernatremia: confusion, hallucinations, and delirium. Elias opened his eyes to a world that was fluid and distorted. He saw his wife standing at the end of the cabin, wearing a sundress and holding a pitcher of iced tea. She was smiling, but her eyes were black and hollow. "The water is fine, Elias," she said, her voice echoing in his skull. "It's right there." He tried to crawl toward her, dragging his useless legs. "Please, just one sip." She didn't move. She just tipped the pitcher. Seawater spilled onto the floor, hissing like acid. "It's not enough," she whispered. "You have to drink all the sea." He screamed, a dry, ripping sound. He knew she wasn't real. His mind was lying to him, begging him to drink more of the poison to silence the cellular pain. He began to hallucinate a grotesque party in the small cabin. Fish swam through the air, their gills sputtering salt. The floor was covered in glistening, white crystals, a parody of snow. Every surface was coated in salt. He licked his own cracked hand, and the sharp, burning taste confirmed the lie. The intense dehydration caused by the seawater was now triggering organ failure. His kidneys, overworked and starved of water, were shutting down. He knew this meant his body's toxins would start to build up, accelerating the cognitive breakdown. He found himself laughing. A harsh, dry, terrifying sound. He was a sailor, killed not by a storm, not by a shark, but by the water itself. A scientific irony that was torturing him in his final hours. The sodium. He tried to focus, to cling to the scientific fact as a shield against the delirium. The salt he had ingested was drawing moisture from the cerebrospinal fluid, collapsing the delicate balance of his central nervous system. He felt his consciousness fragmenting, breaking into sharp, painful pieces. He curled up, shaking, his body a battlefield of chemical reactions he could no longer control. It was the 7th day, or maybe the 8th. Time had become meaningless, measured only in the increasing agony of his body. He was sprawled on the deck, half-conscious, his skin blistered by the sun. He wasn't even thirsty anymore. The sensation had evolved into a dull, comprehensive internal ache. His body was beyond signaling thirst. It was now simply dying. Then a sound. A deep, persistent, mechanical thrumming that cut through the delirium. He opened his eyes. The horizon was still a perfect blue circle, but there was a faint smear of gray on one edge. It was a ship. A large one. He fumbled for his last remaining tool, a small, chipped mirror meant for signaling. He needed to hold it up to flash the sun. He needed to be visible. His arm wouldn't obey. It felt like lead weighted down by stones. He tried to tell his hand to grip the mirror, but the message from his brain was garbled, lost in the chemical soup of his dying body. Signal. He managed to raise the mirror an inch, then 2. The sunlight hit it, flaring briefly. But the tremor was too great. The mirror fell, bouncing off the deck and splashing into the sea. Gone. A wave of crushing defeat, and then something worse, seizure. His body arched violently, a final electrical storm as his central nervous system failed. His eyes rolled back. His muscles seized in a desperate, final spasm of uncontrolled energy. The rhythmic thrumming of the ship's engine grew louder, closer. But for Elias Vance it was too late. He slid into the cool, dark abyss of unconsciousness, his body a silent monument to the fatal truth of the sea. Elias Vance was found an hour later by a German container ship, the Berlin Express, far off their scheduled course. He was barely alive, his core temperature critically high, his body rigid. The ship's medic, a grizzled man named Dr. Klaus, immediately recognized the signs: extreme hypernatremia and acute renal failure. Elias wasn't just dehydrated, he was poisoned by salt. It took 48 hours in the ship's infirmary just to stabilize his blood chemistry. Days of careful, methodical rehydration with specialized intravenous fluids were required to slowly pull the salt from his cells without causing fatal brain swelling. When Elias finally woke, the first thing he saw was Dr. Klaus. "You are a very lucky man, Elias," Klaus said, his voice quiet. "Your friend, the Seawater, it almost claimed you." Elias couldn't speak, but his eyes asked the question. "You had enough fresh water to make it 2 more days," the doctor explained, folding his hands. "Your body was conserving everything. But the moment you took that salt, your body slammed the panic button. You didn't just consume poison, you forced your body to waste the few remaining drops of fresh water you had, using it up to flush out the salt. That sip," he concluded, looking Elias directly in the eye, "that sip was the single most deadly mistake you could have made. It didn't buy you time, it cost you 2 days of life." Elias lay there, the truth a cold, hard scientific certainty. He had spent his life preparing to survive the physical dangers of the sea, the storms, the waves, the cold. He had never fully respected the chemical dangers. In the end, it wasn't the storm that brought him to the brink. It was his own educated, desperate, and ultimately fatal decision to violate the most sacred rule of survival. The ocean offers no middle ground. In survival, there are lines drawn by nature and science that must never be crossed. The thirst for seawater is a lure, a powerful biological urge that offers a momentary pleasure in exchange for accelerated destruction. Elias survived because of luck and an unexpected detour, but the science of his mistake remains absolute. The moment you drink the sea, you sign your own death warrant. If this deep dive into the real, terrifying science of survival resonated with you, if it reminded you of the sheer power of nature and the unforgiving laws of biology, then hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that in a survival situation, the greatest enemy isn't the environment, it's the desperate voice in your own head telling you to break the rules. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because next time, we'll bring you another story that tests the very limits of human endurance and the science of what it takes to stay alive. Let us know in the comments, what is the single most important rule of any survival situation?